cheaper than our producer's underage sister, edgier than the stuff shown on late-night television, newer than Kim Kardashian's ex. Live from Orlando, it's Crazy Train Radio.
Hello out there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight. Tension grows, the whistle blows, and the puck goes down the ice. The goalie jumps and the players bump and the fans all go insane. Someone roars, Bobby scores at the good old hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game.
All right, folks, back again with another special guest with some Philadelphia Flyer ties. And because she actually came out recently with her first sports book, Flyer Lives, the author, Jakki Clark. Jakki, what's going on?
Nothing much. How are you today?
Good. So what can you tell us first and foremost, what inspired you to come out with a sports book, let alone dealing with the Philadelphia Flyers?
Well, I grew up, my dad played for the Flyers, and I grew up, among the Flyers family. And, this is a subject that was near and dear to my heart. And when I found out that we were hosting the Winter Classic, I just started thinking about how so many of the players learned to play outdoors and how cool it would be for them to be, they probably haven't played outdoors in years. And it was really interesting because I figured guys, from my dad's era, they would all for sure have started learn to skate outdoors and everything. But it turns out even a lot of the current players did too. And so that's where it sort of started from, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
That is awesome. And she did hint to it, though I would think most, at least in the Flyers fan base, would have probably guessed it. When I introduced her, I did say her name is Jakki Clark, so I guess that would give away who her father is, and NHL Hall of Famer Bobby Clark. But, Jakki, anyway, what is that like personally, before we get back to the book, growing up with a professional athlete, especially the one that was so successful as a player?
Well, it's funny. I get asked that question quite often, and I never really quite know how to answer that because I really don't have, anything to compare it to, other than to say, I had a great childhood. For me, I wasn't born yet when they won the cups and all that, so I missed all that hoopla, and which I understand was like a really cool, fun time for the Delaware Valley, but fortunately I missed it. And so, really, I was in first grade when my dad retired, and so I only really knew more so of, the management side, when he was in the front office. And I gotta tell you, it's hard a lot of times, especially in, Philly, which is such a, fervent sports town. It was hard hearing people, criticize him and say bad things about him, like when they didn't like a certain trade or, that kind of stuff, and not understanding it. Being a kid, you don't get that business is business, you don't know anything about business. So, obviously there's a great many perks and everything. I'm by no means complaining. I'm just, it's, a lot of people don't realize, also that another downside of it is that, when a player gets traded, or, my dad, signed a contract with Minnesota or Florida, the whole family is uprooted. And, kids have certain schools and, it could be tough. Like, I went to 3 different high schools in 4 years in 3 different states. So there are things that I don't think like the average person really thinks about, like how it can impact a kid. But like I said, it was a great childhood. I had a lot of fun. I'm just so glad that we always could come back to the area. Like in the summertime, no matter where we lived during the season, we always came back and went down the shore. So we still got to, keep our Philly roots and our, it's good to see our friends, at least in the summertime. So that was really nice. But, it's a really neat thing. Like now that I'm older, then I can appreciate it so much more. Like writing this book and hearing, these guys' stories and how some of them, including my father, overcame such huge obstacles and so much adversity in their life, in order to, that's how much they love playing this game, and they would do anything, go to any lengths to play it. And I have, a real, solid and deep respect for all of them, because, a lot of them, a lot of people would have given up. I'd just put it that way.
Well, Jakki, obviously, for those who haven't seen the book, you have spoken with several generations of Flyers players, from guys who played with your father, such as Dave Schultz, Barber, your father, to guys such as, Chris Terrian, and even younger guy who's no longer in town, James Van Riemsdyk. So you got a couple different perspectives as far as the generation gap goes. Was there anybody specific that was obviously your favorite to speak with?
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. Honestly, as I wrote the chapters, each one of them waited about hearing their different stories. They're obviously, super nice guys, super nice. And, some are funnier than others. Chris Terrian had me, I was crying. I was laughing so hard. He's just hysterical. And, I did talk about a lot of the different, locker room pranks and road trip pranks that they would pull. I put a lot of them in the book. I loved hearing all of them, but there's some that were unprintable, because, kids are going to be reading the book and everything, and he had quite a few of those that were, they weren't rated PG. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it so much, and including, the current guys who, they talk about, how much the game has changed, and it's just, Paul Holmgren, his story, it was absolutely amazing. The fact that he literally, died 3 times while getting operated on, so he could come back, and he came back from that and played, continued to play, I've learned so much about these different guys that I didn't know, and that's really, I think, the greatest thing about this book is that it really gives fans a view, of the human interest side, and a view of these guys that they don't normally, get to see and hear about. This is what my parents did to help me get to the highest level. And this is what I do with my own kids to help them, and they give great advice, and you just don't see that in an average sports book. Usually it's just all about stats and stuff like that. So I think that's why this one stands out from the pack. And it's really tough choosing the players to go into it. I tried to pick the most popular ones over time, and sometimes it just came down to availability, scheduling wise, or what have you. But I really love talking to each and every one of them.
Well, back to you on a personal level as well, if we can. Obviously, growing up with Bobby Clark as your father, and yes, you probably just knew him as dad besides the general manager and the professional athlete. But would you say you were criticized if you played sports because of growing up as a child of someone who was a professional athlete?
No, I think being a girl, my sister and I got really lucky in that regard. I imagine my brothers definitely had a whole nother story growing up. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on, you know, the male athletes, you know, like that if their dad's a professional athlete, there's way more pressure on boys to live up to that legacy. But no, I didn't feel that. I mean, and I played pretty much every sport you can think of except for hockey. And, you know, like as I mentioned before, we moved around a lot, and at the time they didn't, like, you know, they didn't have the same sports in Minnesota as they did in New Jersey or in Florida. So I had to pick up a couple new sports here and there, or, you know, I went out, like, for example, I played basketball, and I'm 5'4", and I went out and moved to Minnesota, and there's all these, you know, really tall Midwestern girls that are like, you know, came, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to make the team out here, so I picked up cross-country skiing. So anyways, I feel very lucky in that I wasn't criticized, and, you know, I was pretty decent. I mean, I could hold my own, you know, whatever sport I was playing, so, no, I don't think that, and I actually feel really bad for kids, like, nowadays, where, you know, there's so much pressure just for the average kid. You know, that's one of the reasons I wrote this book also, to get advice from these guys, because you hear all these stories about parents going crazy at Little League games and, like, getting into fist fights or, you know, with the ref or with other players, or just, you know, screaming at their children and putting so much pressure on them. And I can only imagine, you know, the level of scrutiny that some of the, you know, the kids of today's athletes must feel, because, you know, it's really escalated to a whole nother level than when I was a child.
Yeah, because the only reason I asked that question, because there was another athlete, professional athlete from baseball, that wrote a book about coaching and parenting kids, and he was talking about the experience with his own kids, about just going out and being it for them to not to be criticized because of who he was, that they should be able to, if they want to play baseball or softball or whatever the case was, that his kids should just be able to go play the game and enjoy themselves and not have to deal with because of who he is.
Right. Well, I totally, you know, I get that. Like there are, you know, in other avenues though, there is something that I had to learn to get used to, in that no matter what success I achieved, whether it was, you know, getting a really good job or, you know, different things like that, you know, people automatically, most people automatically assume, well, it's because of my dad. My dad did it for me, or, you know, this or that. And while it's true that he knows a whole lot of people and he helps a lot of people and they want to help him, you know, they want to return favors and stuff like that, you almost have to work twice as hard to prove yourself. Like, no, I got this job because I'm smart and I'm good at it, or whatever it is. I worked in politics, which is very competitive, and there are people that, you know, just would automatically assume that I just got it because of him, who he knows. So that, but for someone like me, that's just an extra motivating factor to, you know, prove them wrong. You know, so, but there is that assumption, I think, a lot of times where, like, oh, well, of course, you know, but look at her dad or something. And, you know, I understand it, I get it, but, like, and I've made peace with it, too, you know, at this point in my life. But when I was younger, I would get offended by it, you know, like, no, I got this on my own. But, you know, like I said, there's lots of perks. I'm not complaining. My dad's awesome. Like, he's a wonderful father. He's an amazing grandfather. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of qualities that, you know, the public doesn't get to see. You know, like his softer side, if you will. But, you know, a lot of doors have been opened. But for me, you know, for this book, for example, I was really lucky that because of, my relationships with, certain people, that I was able to get this book published. It might have been harder if my dad wasn't who he is, So there's definitely benefits, obviously, but there's downsides too, and I can see where that other athlete would feel, as a parent would feel some guilt, if his kid's getting picked on or scrutinized, and it's because of him, you'd feel like, I'd feel awful too.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's the success been of this book that you have heard as far as reviews or even from the organization itself? What kind of feedback have you gotten on this book so far?
I have to tell you, I have been so touched by, and it just reaffirms and my decision to dedicate the book, to the fans, Philadelphia sports fans, because I can't tell you how touched I've been about how kind and amazing the responses have been, or the crowds coming out to the book signings, and I was at the carnival, the Flyers Lives, annual carnival, and I had people come up to me and say, I'm so excited to meet you. I loved your book, and the coolest thing about it was that there were kids. They're like, Mom, this is the book I was telling you about. Can I get it? And I was like, that's awesome, because kids have so much going on, with their video games and technology and all this kind of stuff, and that they were excited to read a book. I was like, yes, this is awesome. But yeah, I think because one of the unique things about the book, and this is why you don't necessarily even have to be, it's a crowd pleaser as far as people that like other sports as well, as I'm sure, you found reading it. One of the things I did was I picked pivotal years of each guy's career, and I talked about, what was going on in Philly at the time, or, significant other sporting events, what the Eagles were up to, or, this was the year so-and-so got drafted, or what have you. And I also talked about pop culture, and
exactly, I was going to bring that up.
Okay. Well, the whole idea is if I had to sum up the book in one sentence, I would say, as the reader takes a trip down, as the player takes a trip down memory lane, so does the reader. So I wanted people to feel good, be like, yeah, oh my gosh, I remember that. I was in, 8th grade at the time. But it's supposed to be it's supposed to make you feel good. And the stories are all inspirational. I think that everyone just really has come away with this, feeling of wow, that's, and I know that, I'm not an avid reader of sports books, but I do know enough about them to know that this really isn't like any other book that, at least that I've ever seen. And so I think that, I'm sure there's some people that don't like it, but, I'm okay with that. I don't like every book that I read either, but the responses that I've gotten, and really, really kind letters. And, I have a Facebook page for the book, and, people have written me messages about how much, that a certain story meant to them because they had gone through the same thing, or, it was just very, very touching. And it was also really neat then to have, I didn't know that this was going to happen this year. It's kind of funny, but it just worked out so nicely that the year that, my book gets published, is also the year where they unveiled a statue of my dad outside of, my dad, Bernie Crown, outside of Xfinity Live. And as you may know, Bernie has a book out as well, and Bernie and I did book signings together at Barnes & Noble a couple of times, and so it all just kind of worked out really well. So a lot of really people, feeling really good and really happy. I mean, it's obviously a disappointing season, but on that end of it, feeling that, the Flyers, the legacy that Mr. Snyder has is just, you almost can't wrap your head around it. I mean, that one guy, is responsible for such an empire. And So yeah, I mean, I've had great fun in hearing that, you know, this book has meant something to so many people.
Well, to wrap this up, I got two questions here I guess we could sum this up with. First one would be, where can people get the book the easiest? And second of all, because you mentioned it in your answering the last question before there, you got any upcoming book signings going on?
Okay. Well, the first question is, basically you can get the book wherever books are sold. You know, walk into Barnes & Noble, go to Barnes & Noble, you know, bnn.com, Amazon, you can go to the publisher's website, Triumph Books. There's people, if you want to go on my Facebook page, it's Flyer Live. And, you know, if you want a signed copy, you can do it that way. Some people will just, you know, if they can't make it to a signing or something. Right now, I actually am not sure when I'm going to be doing another signing just yet. With summer coming up and watching this, you know, see how everything unfolds, I would say, though, that the best place to check it out, because I announced it on my Facebook site, and I'll let you know when something's coming up. So yeah, but you can, you know, we can do, like I said, you can, if you would like one signed, you know, you could inbox me there. Someone will, you know, make sure that I get the correct information, and I can get it out that way in the interim. You know, with Father's Day right around the corner, I mean, you could not find a better book for the guy in your life, whether it's your father, your you know, your husband, whatever. It's definitely a guy's book. So I would say, yeah, that if you're not sure what to get your, you know, from the guys in your life for Father's Day, this is a great pick. I do say so myself.
Well, Jakki, obviously we know you, and from talking to you off air, you've done other writing projects. Do you have any other projects coming up that you're working on currently?
I do, and I'm so excited about it. I have two thrillers, both set in the Delaware Valley, and yeah, the wheels are really in motion with those. I'm currently working on the third right now. And yeah, like now that I've got this one done, and I'm just, you know, doing, you know, the promotion and everything for it, I can go back to those and some really exciting stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about it publicly soon. But for right now, it's you know, the wheels are kind of turning behind closed doors. But yes, I'm really excited about it. Writing is great fun for me, and I feel very lucky that, you know, I can do something I love for a living.
Well, as soon as you get more details and can talk about those books that you're working on, these thrillers, please let us know. Jakki Clark,
Absolutely.
she's got Jakki Clark, Flyer Lives. Get it now. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all that stuff. It's a good, fun read for all the guys in your life, like she said. Jakki, thank you so much.
Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good